All right. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming out today. We are here to talk about, can Web3 make us healthier? It's kind of maybe an interesting question. I don't know that we generally associate health with tech per se, mental health, planetary health, whatever it might be. But with decentralized tooling, we might just be able to make us healthier in the grander sense with new tech. So I'd like to talk to each of you today about what you're doing in your own facets of decentralized science. What is decentralized science? What's it solving for? And what the future could be if it takes hold. So let's start with where we're coming from. Actually, no, let's start with introductions. Can you please each tell me who you are and what you're working on? Let's start with Albert.
Yeah, my name is Albert Anis. I'm working on a protocol called Valley. We're a decentralized organization helping climate biotechnology researchers tokenizing and getting their research funded. My background is in biotech. I've led research projects. I've also worked on the commercial side, and I'm bringing that background with the bottlenecks and challenges that I've seen in this industry and try to improve it using Web3 blockchain.
My name is Jenna. I'm the Science and Dealflow lead for Athena DAO. And my background, Athena DAO is a leading platform to fund women's health research. Basically, we fund research a bit earlier than, say, venture capital. And we want to make sure that we are able to work with the researchers to spin out companies from those labs. So that things like the research is actually being translated into a product for the market. And my background is in molecular biology. I studied this formally, have a PhD from Brandeis University. And yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yep, thank you also. My name is Bharat. By background, I used to be a medical doctor. I quit a few years ago and then I became a DGen for a little while. And then I have been in the DeSci space for 2 years. I'm the co-founder of Muse Matrix, which is a decentralized research institute where we bring together scientists and Web3 developers to cross-pollinate ideas and build out products.
Hi everyone, my name is Riccardo. I come from academia, so I'm still doing my PhD, third year. So my traditional background is in academia. A couple years experience in industry as well. Director of Research HubFoundation. So Research Hub basically is a platform that helps the open sharing, collaboration, and incentivization of research online. So basically looks like Reddit for science platform where people can come in, share papers, and interact.
Amazing. So you all, I think it's safe to say, have a relatively traditional science background. You've worked in the space or you are kind of in that. What does that look like for those of us who are not scientists or PhDs or medical doctors? How does it happen? Who are the stakeholders? Can you tell us a little bit in your own kind of corners or in your own experience, the landscape that exists or has existed in the past, and then we'll dive into kind of how DeSci solves for it. Whoever wants the question, I'll leave it up to you guys to chime in whenever you'd like.
Yeah, so normally, at least for me, I can tell you about what it is to do like a PhD. So when you start because you're really passionate about science. You want to delve into specific topics, and so you start to creating your research and so on. And so basically, lots of hours, especially with wet lab. Most of us are in wet lab environments, and so you spend a lot of time in the lab doing experiments, which is basically what researchers should do. But you then also spend a lot of time writing papers, and if you're a professor, you spend a lot of time writing grants, because the way it works is basically writing grants gets you money, which basically gets you the ability to get people to do the research. The research then allows you to publish papers about what you've done, and that papers basically legitimize your work, which allows you to get even more money. So it's basically this feedback loop where you need to publish in order to get money, in order to do research, and there's a lot of problems with that, and we can probably talk about it a bit.
Publish to perish model, not great.
Exactly. Yeah, I can also add from the PhD side, many hours in the lab. I was in research for 8 years before now. And yeah, it's constantly you or your professor looking for grants, as Riccardo said. And that got me thinking, and around, a couple years ago, I was also getting involved in crypto, just thinking about I was learning about personal finance and then also investing. So that was my entry point. And just seeing these like two worlds in parallel, I was just thinking like there has to be a better way, because it just like creates pretty bad environments in academia and research in general, when we're always thinking about where is the next source of funding coming from, and places like the NIH in the US are the largest funder of biomedical research, but the timelines are quite slow. To get the funding is incredibly rigorous, and becomes so competitive, just because now everyone is fighting for this same pool of capital. So yeah, like traditional research has a long way to go, and I hope what we're doing will improve the situation.
And so I'm curious, so it's generally governmental, kind of national institutes that are giving out the funding. Are there other bodies that would traditionally fund research normally, or is that really largely where it comes from?
Yeah, the majority of research funding comes from governments. Now there are a couple of philanthropic organizations like the Bezos Earth Fund, like Schmidt Futures. They're becoming more and more common. So like rich old dudes and grannies putting money into science, and that is amazing. One thing, however, with that model is that I don't really believe it solves the funding gap, because what you see is labs with a lot of money already receiving that money, because in their view it's we should give it to like the best researchers in the world because they're going to push the envelope, but that's not always the case. So I think trying to revamp the mechanism for how funding is distributed is an important aspect, and something that DeSci is also focusing on. One thing maybe to add there is that actually, no, I'll save that and I'll let you go next, Riccardo.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on that because I got a comment just the other day about the name behind how the same groups kind of like get the funding all the time. How better it would be to like submit papers without having names, just the content, so you're not biased, in admitting some papers and so on. Same would apply for funding. The problem with funding is kind of like you want to show the track record of what you've done, so to prove basically that you're able to execute on what you're proposing. So it's a little harder there, but totally agree with Albert. Unfortunately, like the biggest part of the money is always going to the same people, labs and so on.
And is it the same people, the same diseases, the same causes, the same issues, or is it really kind of an individual thing, or more a
It becomes
cost?
generational, because you have some labs that are so successful, and they are the labs who get the money from, like when there's a new foundation or institute, they send the money basically to the top labs. And those labs are like highly regarded, and then the students that graduate from those places and the postdocs, they already have a lot of eyes on them because they're like the lab is known in the field, and then they carry these titles with them and this like prestige with them onto the job market. And so usually they're the ones who are selected for like faculty positions, and which are super hard to get. So you can go through your training and spend a decade in research, but it's at a point now where if you're not from somewhere with a lot of prestige, then you can't, it's very difficult to get in, like to start your own lab at a university. Only I think 1 or 2% of people with a PhD will go on to do so. So yeah, it's much more than just like who is big now. It is, it's actually generational.
Yeah, there's like a legacy system in providing funding, and I'm curious to know what are the KPIs, and then we'll get into DeSci, I promise, but what are the KPIs there for these labs? Like, is it commercializing a drug, or is it reducing? Yeah, okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. I
Interrupt
just can't
away.
hold myself. I think it's I would say number of publications, and Riccardo, like you guys are more specialized in this, but that's the first thing that I would like come to think about, because that is the most tangible way right now for academics to measure their success, is like number of publications, and then on top of that, which is like a meta or like a sub KPI, which is number of citations. So that is the amount of time somebody else references your paper, and the more that you have, the more that you're perceived to be good or the best, like in your field. And what this creates is people publishing things that get cited, as opposed to publishing things that are that actually moves the needle of research and science forward.
And you'll understand this metric is not great when you know that you can cite yourself. So I can cite myself. It's like, hey, who do you want to vote for? And then I vote for myself.
Yeah.
It's
and they all like, they talk with each other, and they like, oh, if you cite me, I'll cite you back, and like it's
there's this thing it's called like paper mills. Basically, there's been this phenomenon, especially like recent years, where there's these groups that literally just like put out papers, like paper mills, and you see this huge list of like 60 authors on a paper, which only serve the purpose of like citing each other. So yeah, it's tangible. It's out there. You just look a bit and you'll see it.
Okay. And so how can DeSci do better? It sounds like we have some issues, obviously, with centralization, legacy systems. That translates to funding. It translates to maybe some publishing issues. Can you share a little bit more about what DeSci is, maybe, and how we can address some of these issues with our traditional science system? Maybe Bharat, you're a
So just
DeSci
and kind of summarize on some of the things that we talked about. So I didn't do a PhD because the funding was a rat race. You had to follow what the funding bodies do, and one of the most important things was you don't really get ownership in what you work on. So it's like, do you want to join this startup? You're going to get a shitty startup wage, and if the startup succeeds, you get nothing. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I didn't do the PhD. Lack of ownership, the funding having to be dictated by someone higher up, and you can finish an undergraduate degree in computer science, be 21, and raise money into a startup. You can't do that as a scientist. You have to wait until you run a lab by the time you're like 30, 35. So these were the things that didn't make sense, and these are kind of individual things that DeSci is trying to solve. So giving the actual scientists some ownership in what they work on, routing funding based on the idea, not necessarily the age, credential, or the geography of the person, and whatever the third thing I said, I already forgot.
Okay, so we have the kind of funding side, the replication side too, I believe is kind of an issue. Can you tell me a little bit about the DeSci landscape today? Because we have kind of a lot of different actors here represented, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 research institutes, and then we have 2 DAOs that are focused also on research. Can you share what the difference is, what the DAO structure does in terms of decentralized science, perhaps how that addresses some of the troubles we see?
Maybe I can start.
And about your projects, tell us what you're working on.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we're a protocol that enables researchers to come to us that are looking to fundraise. We tokenize their research. Once it's on chain, you can do a couple of things with it. Primarily, you can fractionalize it, so you can divide it into 1,000 or 10,000 different pieces, and then you can sell those pieces to essentially anyone that is interested in gaining exposure to that research project. So in our case, we focus on climate biotechnology. So think using biology to capture carbon, converting that into useful materials, creating like new food products, new agricultural products that improve the climate. But the cool aspect with this is that it's a completely new funding source that is independent of what you have today. It's also representative of what the public actually wants to fund, right? Because they are the funders, so you kind of like, represent the public in a new way, instead of just the government being the main decision maker of like who gets funding and what type of science that we do. The second aspect is the governance of the intellectual property. So traditionally, you have one university controlling the intellectual property and deciding what to do with it. In this case, the vision really is to detach the intellectual property from the university and have a crowd of different individuals, the individuals who funded the research, to govern the intellectual property. So imagine a future scenario where, let's say a piece of intellectual property that can, take us to the moon for 5 cents. Imagine, right? That would be a really powerful piece of technology that shouldn't belong in the hands of 4 or 5 people, but something that should be commonly shared and accessible by a lot of people. And that is really like the ambition of the tokenization of IP in this case, is to distribute the opportunity and the ownership while funding cool science. Yep.
Anything to add on the DAO side, Jenna?
Yeah, so Athena DAO, we work in a similar manner as Valley DAO, and we fund using IP NFTs. IP NFT just means that this research agreement with the university is minted on chain, and this allows us to fractionalize it in the future for additional fundraising. And then it, as Albert said, also the ability to have the community govern the research, and altogether this should accelerate the process of translating this work actually into a therapeutic or a product, just because now, one, the IP is not siloed in the institution, and now more people are thinking about this piece of research, and actually you'll have the patients and users thinking and reading this as well. So that's the way that we fund, and the way we do our selecting like which labs to fund at Athena DAO is we do a cohort-based approach. So we have a call for submissions a few times a year for a specific area within women's health research. We do this because the women's health space is quite large, so we do market research before we launch each of our cohorts to see where the need is. And then we also onboard subject domain matter experts in the areas that we are funding, so that we can properly evaluate all of the science there. And we have many stages of evaluation. So we have a large science and Dealflow team of about 20 different people. Almost all of them are women in STEM or from a medicine background. And we do internal review of all the applications there, and then we have other senior reviewers, and then we open up the short list that we have to the public to give their opinion and to vote also as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like, which I really appreciate, you have a sort of dual approach, meaning I don't want to say it's centralized, but there still is a level of high-level expertise that comes into play, because at the end of the day, should I be deciding which research project is better to fund than another? Perhaps not. But I would like to still come in at the end of the day once you've already evaluated, and maybe you give me 10 really amazing options, and then I can say, hey, let's maybe go for this one. It's a nice kind of hybrid model. And for Bharat and Riccardo, how are you guys working? Tell us a
So
little bit about
Research Hub is more like a platform. Like we want Research Hub basically to be entry point for researchers that are trying to dip their toes into DeSci, and so we are providing tools that ideally a researcher should be familiar with. So again, our web app is basically similar to Reddit, so you can upload papers, but there's some small differences. So for example, something that you cannot do on other repositories that cannot really tip. So there's no financial incentives. You cannot request services. This is something that we can do on Research Hub through bounties borrowed from the technical from the software world. Basically, you can put up a little bounty for someone to come in, and you can request a service. That person does fulfills the service and get paid for that. So that's one thing that you can do on top of what is already existing. Because again, platforms like ResearchGate, like Google Scholar, you can see papers already, but there's not so much interaction that you could see, for example, happening on Research Hub. Other tools that are that researchers are familiar with, we have a lab notebook. So when in your lab, you're taking notes. So we have integrated that into the platform, so you can take notes directly on Research Hub, and we're making it just really easy for you to publish, as opposed to what happens normally in academia. It takes forever to publish. On Research Hub, it really takes 2 clicks, because you can permissionlessly publish on Research Hub. Then obviously, if the content you're publishing is not great, you're probably gonna get moderated, or the community itself is gonna moderate it, because you can downvote it, you can upvote it, you can leave comments. So there's like this pretty cool filtering system that happens naturally when something bad pops up on the homepage. You can kind of see it already because like there will be comments, highlighting if the comment is, if the content is good or bad. And other things, we launched a reference manager, which is basically when you're writing a paper, you need to keep track of, like, you basically have to cite, again, other people. And so you're keeping track of, all the citations. So you use this reference manager. We launched it like a couple months ago. And so that's another thing. And the last one is we recently started doing funding as well. Little grants, like, 5K grants to some projects. We require the projects to pre-register their studies. So that's one thing that some researchers are not extremely familiar with, just because it's not like common practice. Basically, when you start, like you would do with a PhD, you start with an hypothesis. You're like, okay, I want to go down this route, explore this phenomenon, this dynamic, and then like over time, you're studying, you're learning, you're researching, and you find out that your hypothesis is not confirmed. So it's basically you would not be able to publish negative results, and so you tend to change course a bit to basically bend the initial hypothesis so that you can publish. And so the pre-registration basically helps preventing that. So you have to state at the beginning what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, and what are your specific, results that you're trying to get, so that you cannot change course while doing the experiment.
Is it all on chain?
It is not. It is not. We have like, basically we are progressively going on chain. So we have like our backend right now is not on chain because like we're still iterating toward product market fit. We're seeing things that are working, things that are not working, and we need to have basically the flexibility to be able to adapt, change things, try new stuff until we find some of the things that are actually working, and then that's where we're gonna basically be building the whole backbone of Research Hub on chain. But yeah, basically we're not really want to be top of the funnel, trying to get as many researchers as possible, and then also inform them and direct them. For example, you get initial funding from Research Hub, you get 5K from our if you get your study pre-registered and you get funding, then if you're if you want to get some more funding, we're probably going to direct you to some other DAOs in the space where you could probably raise a bit more. So the idea is, again, to get an entry point and then potentially direct people to other places in DeSci.
So yeah, I am co-founder of Muse Matrix, and we've heard a lot about DeSci. So if we think the thesis is correct that DeSci is the scientific revolution, then we need a space where scientists are interacting with Web3 developers, and that's the one of the main things that's missing in the space. That these two groups are normally in complete bubbles from one another, don't interact with one another. So that's the primary thing we provide, is a space for these two to learn about each other. So the scientists learn about blockchain, what's a hash function, etc. The developers learn about all the problems in science, and they cross-pollinate and they figure out where there might be solutions that the tech can help solve the scientists' problems. It's a 6-month program, and the idea is by the end of it, there should be like a economically sustainable business, whether that's a VC backable business, whether that's you've done a token sale and that's done well, whether you're doing retroactive PGF mechanisms, etc. There has to be some kind of output. That's the main focus of Muse Matrix.
Very cool. And I'm curious to know a little bit more about your communities. Who's following you now? Who's interested? Do you find that it's largely people who are already in science? Do you feel maybe it's more on the DAO side, but you have a lot of patience? Who's intrigued by DeSci today? Who's buying in?
So for Athena DAO, we've onboarded a ton of scientists and medical doctors into the DAO, which has been super cool. Most of our Dealflow team, this is their first time interacting with anything in Web3. And so we have so many meetings where we're just going through what is a wallet, what is a centralized exchange, how do I collect my tokens, what do I do with my tokens, how do I vote? So almost every week, I think I have a call where I'm just having these conversations with researchers. And this has been super important and super exciting because in some places in academia, there's a bad reputation of, or crypto has a bad reputation with some academics. So it's just great to meet with researchers from all over the world and to have those conversations. And then just one example, we have one person, she She started last fall around the same time as me, was completely new to crypto, and now is like bridging from ETH to Base and asking what other tokens should she buy, and like thinking about like in like longer term investing. So it's just amazing to see that. And then also sometimes on our calls now, when she calls from the lab, her lab is there with her when we have maybe a call with a startup or someone presenting their work. They want to sit and watch the call as well. Her professor is curious about us, so that has just been awesome to see. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of our community actually has been onboarded from Web 2.
Very cool. Are you guys seeing the same thing or maybe a little bit different?
No, it's quite similar. In our case as well, it's people from academia who haven't interacted with that much Web3 in the past, have a very limited understanding of how it works. So there's an onboarding process there for sure. But I think, once people get into it, and, start earning these tokens and so on, I think it creates like a sort of like they can gamify their knowledge in a way. So I mean, it's like everything in life is sort of like a game. You're playing based on a certain set of rules, and in our case, the game is to find the best researchers in the world that can really push the field forward, get those researchers funded, and then get those researchers to market in the fastest way possible. So what we're doing at Valid, how we're seeing things at Validao is sort of like a coordination layer of experts, people from industry, people from the business development side, aggregating all of them and really see the token as like at the core of as the incentive mechanism for driving this coordination. The rules of the feeling of the game really changes drastically when there is an incentive, when you know that the thing that you're receiving is like you get to share part of the upside, or you're part of the future of the thing or the spaceship that you're building. And that's something that you traditionally don't have in academia because you don't have any ownership of your research. That belongs to the university. So Validao is sort of like an outlet or a destination for people to come to and apply their skill sets, because right now there are no platforms or communities where they can directly contribute with the expertise that they've developed over 10s and 15s, 20 years. So I'm really, really excited about that aspect and what it can accomplish.
Yeah, for us, I think we've seen two main audiences. The first one, so Research Hub is like 4 years old, launched in 2020. So actually, I think end of 2019. So we've seen two audiences. Like the first audience, the one that like got into Research Hub, I kind of feel like I'm part of that audience, is people that are already familiar with crypto. So I wouldn't have been able to even find Research Hub if I wasn't looking for blockchain plus science. So you need to be a little bit of like aware of how crypto and Web3 works, and so that's how you learn about these projects and you start to get a little bit into the fold and get involved. So that's one audience. But lately we're scaling our peer review program, and we're like actively outreaching to people to basically come on Research Hub and leave a peer review, and we are looking for scientists from the traditional, world. Obviously, like these people the first audience is obviously scientists and as well, but they still know a bit about crypto. We're now going to after people that are not in crypto, and so we're doing the same thing that Jenna's also doing. Like we have to hold their hands, explain how to do a swap and so on. I think like there's a really great aspect of that is that we are solving two problems, hopefully, accelerating science, but at the same time also educating people about crypto. So we're at the same time onboarding people into crypto, and so maybe even apart from DeSci, they could continue to be interested in the space. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So two main audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I can say I think that decentralized science has found such a unique audience or potential like audience because you have people who are really desperate for funding. And so it seems like they're already going through so many hurdles to get there anyway. So why not set up a wallet? Why not learn how to bridge? They're kind of used to a maybe pain in the ass kind of process to get what they're passionate about done. And so crypto maybe isn't that big of a hurdle for these folks.
Yeah, especially as the industry matures and we have more tools to make it easier for them, because we also cannot expect them to learn how to, bridge and do that thing in like a couple of days. So as the industry matures, we got more tools, we can integrate those tools, hopefully they're, somewhat modular, and so you can port it into your platform, ecosystem, and so on. The easier ideally would be to onboard even more, scientists that are not especially familiar with crypto. So yeah, it's a process. It's a learning process, I guess.
One thing I can add there is we were intentional about like our forms just for them to submit the research because, like, for example, the NIH is incredibly rigorous. The formatting is super intense. Some funding bodies, if you use the wrong font or the font is the wrong size, they don't even look at the application. So, and then it's just months and months long process of reviewing it. So we were intentional making sure that the application process is very short. It only takes like 30 to 40 minutes to apply, and our review time is incredibly fast in comparison.
And are you finding that it's working in that you're getting high-level submissions? You're getting kind of elite submissions? To my knowledge, yes, but
Yeah.
Sure.
We've had submissions from leading institutions all over the world. I won't say exactly who, but yeah, very high quality submissions.
Yeah, and it's one of the first things. Like we've funded a few projects, and from researchers working at top level institutions, and what the first thing they mention is like they love the whole process because instead of taking 2 months, it took like 2 days to go through the submission, and like even get the funding. Sometimes you wait, you win the grant, and then like funding comes 6 months after, but you have to put in your own money from the lab to actually start working and stuff. So the money comes fast, the process is easy. It's just like, again, I think where crypto can really make a difference, because like one question you might have is like, why DeSci? Why crypto? Why? Because it just like makes it easy to accelerate these processes that in science are traditionally slow and expensive. With crypto, we have a pretty good chance of making it fast and cheap.
yeah, and the ones that we can make fast, right? Maybe we don't make the research super, super speedy, maybe we take our time on that front, but all the kind of little inefficiencies that surround it that really don't need to take long and take a really long time. I mean, 2 months to 2 days is like a radical efficiency improvement. That's incredible. So it sounds like you have onboarded clearly academia. Are there other traditional actors who are interested? Because science is long, it's expensive. I'm guessing that you guys might need support from some other more traditional actors to execute what you want to execute, or perhaps not. Can you tell me a little bit about that? If there's, whether it be pharma, more traditional VC, are they buying in, or are they a little bit put off by DeSci?
We've actually we've been approached by, for example, a family office who wanted to get into like funding things in this field, and they were interested in funding research. And it's not that common for these organizations to fund research because they fund like companies directly. So our community was a place for them where they could come and learn. And they actually essentially pay like a membership fee to be part of that, because we were a little bit opportunistic about it, because we're always trying to figure out how do we capture value in a meaningful way that can enable us to continue playing the game. So in terms of traditional actors, yes. Another aspect is that we've also been able to onboard industry. So industry in the research field that we operate in, it's like people who are building big steel reactors and piping and processing to produce different products sustainably. And these guys, this company, what they were looking for is like researchers to work with, because they wanted to innovate and they wanted to apply a more like bio-based solution. So what we could help them with there is like quickly source suitable researchers for them, and essentially, yeah, using like the community there to do that part, and in return for like a service fee of some sort. So, you know, traditional players are coming in, but I think they're having a little bit of like, it's not very clear for them to how to exactly enter, and it's not exactly clear for us of like how we're going to interact with them, but they're definitely curious.
Maybe one more player that I think could be a pretty interesting stakeholder to have in this whole ecosystem, especially actually only on the funding side. You know, hopefully this, you know, industry continues to go, and you know, more people get wealthy and so on. They would probably be looking to also donate some of their money, and they would be, you know, potentially be happy to donate to research. So how do we make it easy for them to donate to research instead of going through the traditional means that, you know, could probably take a lot of time and a lot of like money and hard as well. Let's create some, you know, ways to do it on chain, so that with a couple clicks, you have some, you know, some money you want to donate to, you know, specific, you know, cancer research, or, you know, anything that is like close to you, close to your heart. You can do it fast on chain. So again, fast and easy, make it easy for people to do what they want to do on chain.
It becomes also more like trackable and transparent. Now, of course, like you can hide stuff in crypto, and it's not always the most transparent industry, but if you really want it to be, you can make it that way, and you can make it really, really transparent. And yeah, I think, yeah, just for a donator, like having really good insight and seeing what is happening in the research project that you funded is something that is, to me, a very obvious use case of blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if you do care and you want to have your name there, you know, having the possibility also to like, you know, fund projects, everything's tracked, everything's on chain, you know, a manuscript comes out of the research that you funded, you know, your name's there as a funder, which is something that, you must be pretty proud of. So yeah, definitely a stakeholder that would, you know, keep in mind as a, you know, category in the future to potentially come into, you know, DeSci, you know, for the greater good, basically.
Another way that we've been working with industry is we've had many people approach us, like just wanting to coordinate on data collection and partnerships around data. So that's another side, because I think maybe through Web3, like we're able to grow our audience like quite fast, grow our community, and so this is like an advantage. I think being a DAO instead of being like in a traditional role, because we will start to look into partnerships where we will be able to give like opportunity to our community to participate in studies, and then work with this data like in a more open and collaborative way.
Very cool. I'd like to touch really briefly on the kind of culture of science. So the kind of frame of this conference is tech meets culture. And I do think that science kind of has a reputation of being reserved for a lab, reserved for PhDs, reserved for doctors. I was involved in decentralized science for a little while. I am none of those things, just someone who's really interested in my health and would like to live a little bit better. Decentralized science also goes well beyond health. Do you think that that's a big like kind of mountain you guys have to climb? Is it shifting perception around even what science is? Is it trying to bring the masses in? Do you see that there's like a culture shift that needs to happen in science?
Yeah, so I run a community in London called DeSci London, where we try to onboard a lot of scientists, and it made me realize that in traditional science, not much of a community actually exists, because we've had people that work literally like 300-400 meters apart working on the exact same thing but didn't know about each other. So the lack of kind of being aware of what other people are doing, lack of community, is something that is drawing these people to DeSci, because that aspect doesn't exist in the traditional realm. Which is insane if you're working on the same thing down the street. That's wild that there isn't that coordination layer. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on the culture front that anyone's seeing, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of DeSci is like building on principles that are coming from open science. So, open science started many years ago. Just many researchers frustrated around the same pain points, like publishing and sharing data, not wanting everything to be behind a paywall. But I think with Web3, the culture shift will be even bigger because we have the incentives, the incentive structures, and the ability to coordinate much better. So we will be able to bring on like anyone who is interested in the work we're doing, which will be a large group of people for us, particularly in Athena DAO. We focus on women's health research, and women are half of the population. And this has been an overlooked area of biomedical research as well. So there's people who want solutions. There's people who want to see new therapeutics come to market. There's people who want new consumer products. And so through us, they will be able to actually interact with scientists, interact with the doctors, like on Discord, like in very informal ways, or at meetups. So yeah, altogether, that this could be a big culture shift for science.
Maybe we should learn from you. You said you're not a scientist, you're not a researcher, but you got into DeSci. So there was an aspect. So obviously we have to. I think like one thing is we have to make science more accessible, and part of it is probably making it more cool so that people actually engage, with science. Science is cool. You're a little kid, you grow and you're like, I want to be a scientist, So I think there's that aspect of the cultural layer of science, which I think we have to find a way to make it more cool. But then again, we got to learn from people that got into science but are not scientists, because there's definitely something there that got them into, want to learn more.
Well, and what's so wild to me is that science is everything. It is how I feel in my body. It is how I feel in my brain. It is the air I breathe, the food I eat. Like every moment of every day is science in a way. And so to kind of remove it from everyday life or from every individual just never really made sense to me. There's that. And then I got into DeSci because I care a lot about women's health, actually. I was interested in crypto already, was looking to do something that had some meaning, that had some kind of mission alignment for me personally, which hadn't been the case in my professional work in the past. My mom's a gynecologist. I had really bad periods growing up, never got any answers. I still remember super vividly, like the moment that I went to my mom saying, like, Mom, I passed out in the bathroom in high school. Like, I gotta go see the doctor. And she looked at me and just said, girl, I'm the person you're gonna see. And I'm telling you, there's nothing for you. And that moment, as like a 16-year-old being like, wow, there's just no answers. We just don't know. And, she teared up, and I've heard a lot of stories from her over the years too of just missing information. And specifically on the women's health front, obviously feel a kind of kindred spirit there, but it just makes no sense. It's a travesty, like we're half the population. So being able to hopefully improve the way that we live. We're talking about kind of make us healthier. I would consider health in a really vast, sense of the term. Can we live better? Yes, I think so. And I think being able to include more people, understand what people want and need out of science, make them citizen scientists. I'm sure there are small observational studies that I could carry out with my girlfriends when we're like, hey, we're all in pain about this thing at the same time each month. What's going on? Let's take some notes. Give us the framework for that. I think there's a lot of people who would take a little bit of action to try to feel a little bit better in their lives, and I love DeSci for that.
Yeah, I think you got a great slogan. I mean, science is everywhere. Science is innovation. The reason why we're living longer and we can move using cars and planes and so on is because of science. So everyone should care, basically.
Yeah, and it can be a little scary sometimes. Like, let's be honest too. I think it's been very kind of closed off in this sort of black box vibe where maybe COVID did us, I don't know if you can call it a favor in that regard, but it got people interested in how science happens, being like, hey, wait a second, we don't actually really know all that much as a general population. I think in the long term that will be a gift. In the short term it was maybe a little bit of a pain, but it is for everybody at the end of the day, certainly.
COVID was great at showing the limitations of science. When COVID happened, basically what happened is there was such a faster way of like getting science out because it was needed. Like you need to answer. You didn't have like 6 months to get published in Nature. I don't care. I just want to get the answers out because people are dying, and so that literally showed the limitations. That showed that we could do science better, but then that was an isolated case, and so we need to take that as a hey, remember. We were able to do so. Why don't we scale it to make science better, in general, not just for COVID.
I was just going to add, also, like, particularly in women's health space, because many treatments are not yet available, I think it's so important that patients and just anyone is aware of the science that's being done very early, because thinking from, like, biotech pharma perspective, we're starting to see many different, like, new types of drugs. So instead of taking a pill, maybe it's a treatment that involves gene editing, or like during COVID, we saw the mRNA vaccine, and so RNA therapeutics, there's another large area. But talking to patients, it's super important that people understand that each of these modalities is delivered in a different way, may have side effects. Gene editing is not reversible. So I think it's just super important that those patient communities are involved very early to have that input. So we're not just making new drugs that people aren't comfortable with taking.
All right, we only have a few minutes left, guys. I'm going to do a little quick fire round here. I have 3 final questions for each of you. I would like to know your favorite DeSci moment, whether it's a piece of research you saw funded that you're like, oh my God, yes, thank God it's actually happening, whether it's a personality that came in and tweeted about it, whatever it is. Favorite DeSci thing that's happened so far? If you have one. If not, it's okay.
I'll start. So I'm running this fellowship. There is a fellow here, Katia. Hello. But one of my favorite moments was actually last week, where we had a scientist who started with us 6 weeks ago, knew nothing about Web3, what blockchain is, absolutely no idea. And she was assigned to do a presentation on a super dry concept. It was like blockchain and GDPR. And like I wasn't expecting much for this presentation, but she gave a really good presentation. She talked about like ZK proof. She talked about hash stuff, all these things that literally a little while ago she had no idea what it was. So to see that was my personal favorite DeSci moment.
I would say earlier this year, we had our first Athena DAO summit, and we invited like researchers from academia, clinicians, and it was just, and the focus of the summit was on reproductive longevity. And it was unlike any other summit or conference that I've been to, because, well, yeah, I think earlier Bharat mentioned researchers can work very close by and never interact or know each other. And that was absolutely the experience. Like in my time in research, I would go to very, very focused conferences only around one type of molecule. And like there certainly wasn't anyone from medicine there. So that was just amazing to me to like bring these different people in the room, because we were also able to like have conversations about like the fastest way to go forward, like new collaborations were formed there. So that was, one of my favorite moments so far.
My favorite moment was, so I think in 2017, I was reading a book on synthetic biology authored by this really big professor in this field. His name is George Church. And that book was what inspired me to like enter the field and dedicate potentially the rest of my life to that research area. And fast forward to end of last year, we managed to, actually start a conversation with him and his lab at Harvard. And now we are in the process of, launching a project together with him, which is a really, really, really super cool thing. And something I'm really, really excited about.
Bravo. Super cool.
Yeah, I would say for the broader DeSci space, just, this past year, getting a little bit of recognition from the broader space that we exist and we're doing something cool. I think that was just cool, just like seeing articles coming out, just like people curious about, at least like curious about what we're doing. And then obviously, there's people that stick and people that do not, but like that little recognition, that was already something on a personal level for Research Hub. Just like, sometimes you get these comments, like this DM from people that have joined and are like, "Oh, I love doing peer reviews on Research Hub." I got great feedback from from people in the community, even like people posting their papers to get feedback, getting feedback on Research Hub and implementing that, those changes in the article. So that's kind of like little things that add up. I don't think we've hit like a major moment yet, but we've got a little something. So that's something definitely to hold on for now.
You need a lot of little moments to go far, so all good. Last question, what do you need from crypto? What are your pain points? What are you like, guys, please solve this. This would help us so much. Is there anything that you've noticed? Because I think that, again, you are talking with a lot of folks who weren't necessarily interested in crypto to begin with and have done it because they've had to. Any requests or tips or advice for the wider crypto audience? What can they do for you to make running research better and easier and faster? If anything, or they're doing a fabulous job.
Yeah, we need more developers and sci-curious people to take an interest.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the tools are there, at least like from our perspective, like we know that the tools are there. They might not be perfect. Because like one thing I would say is right now the problem that we're having the most is like literally simplifying the crypto part of DeSci, but the tools are there already, like smart wallets, stuff like that. We just need to implement it. So maybe ask me the same questions next year once we've implemented some of that, and I'll come back to you. But for now, I think there's the tools are there, so we might do well for now.
Cool, amazing. Anything you're missing, Albert?
I think patience, because this is a very fast-paced industry, and people want to see returns in 2 minutes. And science is a very, very long process. Now, and I think these people are like, there are definitely patient people in the space, but I think as a call to action to everybody who's watching this after the conference, is to be more patient in this industry.
Yeah, I second that. Long-term vision, holding out for things that will make an impact in the long run, not just in the next few weeks, would be really, really cool. Maybe last really quick thing, how can people get involved? Who should get involved? Where can they find you? What's the best way if people want to reach out to you guys after?
Discord.gg/validao. The reason why I'm not giving you our Twitter is because Discord is the best way to directly engage with our community, the people behind it, and read real-time announcements on what's going on.
If you want to contribute to the community, join our Discord. Same with Research Hub. If you're a scientist, wanna just use the platform, go to researchhub.com, use the platform. If you're interested in what we're doing and you don't know if you want to get involved yet, follow Research Hub on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Our website is athenadao.co, and all of our official links are there. And yeah, Discord is the best place to communicate with us quickly.
And whether you're a developer or something else, if you are interested in doing something DeSci but have no idea where to start, come find us. We run fellowship programs. They are free. We educate you on what you need to do and then help you build something. So check us MuseMatrix _ on Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you so much to everyone on the stage. I think we can say Web3 will hopefully make us all healthier, thanks to you. And have a great rest of the week.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for moderating.
Pleasure.